When somebody says no to you, do you want to do it more? Do you take it as a challenge? Or do you see it as face value and move on? The answer to that question is it depends. It depends on how badly you want it. No is what I heard from my family when I told them I wanted to learn how to fly. No is what I heard from my industry when I sought out a mentor and a job. No is what I heard from my own body when I was grounded by a life-threatening illness. I was born in Greece, but I grew up in Chicago, so if any of you have seen the movie My Big Fat Greek Wedding, it's literally like watching home videos for us. We had restaurants and snack shops and grocery stores and butcher shops and strip malls. So when I was asked to interview a flight instructor for a school project, and I got the aviation bug, it's a true thing, all I could think about was airplanes. It was like a sickness. So imagine, I bebop home to my dad, I'm 13 years old, and I said, Dad, I want to learn how to fly airplanes. And he said, no. We are Greek. We do not do these things. I said, oh, come on, Dad, look at Olympic Airlines. Look at the Greek Air Force. He said, yes, but there are no women there because it's not women's work. Now, you know, he wasn't wrong, and I had my challenge. It's not easy to change a patriarchy. You don't do it with strong arm and force. You do it slowly and systematically, appealing to pride and ego, and with some help from Mom. I persisted, and I eventually convinced my traditional Greek family that a good Greek girl could fly airplanes. I bagged groceries and worked in the family restaurant for years. I told myself, it's a 4-to-1 ratio, 4 days of work, and I can pay for 1 more day of flying lessons. Eventually, I earned my private pilot's license. Nobody in my family flew. They didn't really understand what that meant. So when I took my dad up for his first airplane ride in a Cessna, or chestnut, as he calls it to this day, we weren't 50 feet in the air, and I could see the pride in his face and that he was convinced. My family became my biggest champions, and boy, did I need them. Convincing them was just the first of many, many hurdles. I had no idea how difficult it would be to break into such a male-dominated industry. I looked for mentors while I was still in high school, and when I told the one and only airline pilot I knew that I was learning to fly, he tilted his head, looked me up and down, and said, what? Wait, what? Why? Just become a flight attendant. You have to understand that the gender silos at that time were incredibly ingrained. Female equals flight attendant or stewardess. Male equals pilot. But I said yes. I sought out the finest aviation school in the country, and I graduated from the University of North Dakota Center for Aerospace Sciences in 1990. Finding a job as a pilot was near impossible. It was a simple supply and demand issue. There were pilots everywhere. So working at the local AT&T phone center store after college is not what I thought I would be doing, but I did. I also washed airplanes. I flight instructed. I flew charters. I flew corporates. I flew turboprops for multiple express carriers, making less money than I did bagging groceries. And just as I thought, you know what? I'm going to go back to school and get my MBA. I got a call out of the blue from an acquaintance. And he said, hey, Evey, you still flying? I said, yeah. I was a little skeptical. Why? What's going on? He said, why don't you come fly 737s for me? I said, I don't know. Are you drug running? He said, no, I am the chief pilot at this new startup airline. And if he only stopped there, right? I was so excited. I'd been flying for 10 years. I was about to get my big break. But he didn't. He went on. He said, I have an HR department. And she said, I need to hire a word I'm not going to repeat. And I thought of you immediately. I was like, oh, this is not how I was hoping to break into this industry. But even though I was disappointed in the circumstance, I really did want the job. And I told him I'd take the position on one condition, that he never, ever called another female that derogatory term again. He apologized and agreed. Now, you have to understand that that mentality was prevalent in the early days, and it was a real good old boy network. It was a barrier to entry for many women. This was our glass ceiling. So breaking into this world of machismo with guns ablazing was not the way to do it. You break in by tackling opportunities as they come, no matter how lackluster they might be. And sometimes it doesn't hurt to have a little help from a friend. I said yes, and 12,000 hours and hundreds of visits to beautiful cities around the world. I sure am glad I did. So about 20 years ago, I was based on the East Coast, and I was in the jump seat commuting home to Chicago. The flight was full, and the captain needed to get out. And as I slid out the flight deck door, there was a guy loitering right in the forward galley area. And he looked at me, and he said, wow, the pilots get their own waitress? I was speechless for the first time in my life ever. And the captain had an amazing comeback. The captain said, no, she's a check pilot. She's making sure we do everything right. Confused, he walked away, and we laughed the whole way back to Chicago. It was a strange time in my career because I had so much support and backing from my fellow pilots and peers, yet the general public had not caught up yet. So 5 years ago, I was saying goodbye to the passengers as they were getting off my jet, and a little old lady stopped and she looked at me. And she said, now where have you been the whole flight? I've been in the flight deck, ma'am. Did you have a good trip? She said, now when did they start letting women do that? This made me reflect and realize what a tough time that generation of women had. How many no's must she have heard in her lifetime? But bells went off in my head, and I realized that standing up front in uniform, I was making a small societal contribution, one flight at a time. Today, the Airline Pilots Association, which represents pilots at major airlines in North America, says that women make up just 5% of its 57,000 pilots. Globally, it's even worse. It's 3%. Only 4,000 of the 130,000 current airline pilots are women globally. Now, that's not surprising, considering in some areas of the world, women are just getting the right to drive. But I truly feel that women and other overlooked groups are the silver lining in aviation as we face an unprecedented shortage of qualified pilots. When I see another female on my flying schedule, I literally do a little happy dance. It's not at all because I don't like men. I love men. But my BFF and I have been on similar moving sidewalks throughout our careers. And we usually end up talking about our experiences, which forms an instant bond. The 747. This iconic aircraft is recognizable worldwide, and it was the last bastion of the boys' club. I flew with one of the first female 747 pilots, and she was a real mentor. She was part of the generation of women that were truly pathfinders in the industry, and I can only imagine what she went through. How is it possible this 95-pound girl can fly a 950,000-pound jet? Upon completion of her training, she was told, "You know, you're not the right material for the 747. She said, "What do you mean? I did great in training. I was at the top of my class." And they said, "Well, we don't think your hands are quite big enough to push those 4 throttles up." She said, "Yeah, I was so mad I was shaking, but I knew better than to burn the house down. I let it go for a day, and then I went in to see the chief pilot, and I said, 'Look, just give me a shot. If I run into any issues, I promise I'll find some man with some big hands to help me out.'" She said yes. While the sexist culture prevailed in the past, I'm so happy to report that the profession now looks like a melting pot. This has improved the industry's culture as a whole. I was so happy. I was finally flying for a global airline on some fantastic international routes. I was even able to secure the inaugural flight to Athens. This was one of the highlights of my career. Flying to my birth country was truly amazing. Shortly after this photo, I donated my hair to Locks of Love. Surely now everything was right in the world. I had a rock star of a husband, 3 amazing sons, a great support network of friends and family. I was on my way to an upward trajectory at work. Yeah, I faced and jumped over some hurdles, but for the most part, I made it out all right. I finally did it. Who gets to surf on Waikiki while they're at work? I was living the dream. This is an often used phrase by pilots, especially when things aren't going as planned. And they did not go as planned. Turns out I would be needing those locks of love myself. I was diagnosed with an aggressive form of breast cancer. I really couldn't believe it. I never saw it coming. I felt great. I was a marathon runner. I ate twigs and berries with my Mediterranean diet. I did 200-plus mile relay races with my airline team. How could this be? When the oncologist told me I had breast cancer, I told her she must be mistaken. She's looking at someone else's slides. Denial was the first form of grief, and I systematically went through all of them. Telling my family, my kids, was the hardest thing by far I'd ever done. It changed everything for me and my family. Up until this point, they had never seen me lay down on the couch during the day, and now I was there every day. My oldest would walk by and hold my hand on his way home after he came home from school, and he wouldn't say a thing as I was laying on the couch. Then he would bounce up the stairs 2 at a time. It was like he was trying to transfer some of his teenage energy into me. My middle son would invite his orchestra friends over, and they'd have full blown-out concerts in the living room. My youngest would insist on a dog walk every day to keep my body moving when it really did not want to. After 4 surgeries, 20 rounds of chemo, 6 weeks of daily radiation, and 8 weeks of physical therapy, I was done. My fun meter was pegged. My Greek mother and father did not leave me for 9 months. My husband, brothers, neighbors, acquaintances, all shaved their heads in solidarity. I was instantly indicted into the bald man group, and I could get ready in 4 minutes flat. But I knew I was lucky. I had my faith, my family, my friends, and my profession to help me navigate each step like a pilot's emergency checklist. And every phase of treatment was broken down into smaller steps. This diagnosis and the subsequent treatments left me weak and tired. but not defeated. I had been flying since I was 16. It never dawned on me that this privilege would be taken away by cancer, and I was determined to get back to flying. I said yes. My company was very good to me, even though I couldn't fly, but that just wasn't enough. I needed something to look forward to, something to get my mind off the cancer, so I decided to go back to school to get my MBA, 22 years later after my first intent. And without the amazing experience at Northwestern's Kellogg School of Management, I would not be on this stage today sharing with the world my journey, hoping to inspire, to add to the melting pot, to encourage future pilots to come fly with me. I've recently requalified in the captain's seat of the 767, free and clear of cancer. That is my first officer. My journey wasn't easy. There was always someone telling me no. But that's never what I heard. Whether it was my family telling me no, I said yes. The industry telling me no, I said yes. Or the ultimate betrayal, my own body telling me no, I said yes. And you can too. Whatever your dream is, whatever, fight for it. When somebody says no, you need to be hearing, it depends. It depends on how badly you want it. Your passion is your contribution to this amazing world. It's not easy. You have to fight for it. And maybe someday I'll see you out in the skies with me.